Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to part one of our question and answer, who the hell am I, etc. video. Part one, yeah, this is going to be quite a long one because I've just dug out the old iPad and I'm looking at the questions that people wrote. I asked, this is a couple of months ago, I posted a video, I need your help, and I wanted some questions. What do you want to know about me, either personally or my music history, my life, etc. And a lot of people wrote. And what I'm just going to do in part one, this video here today, I'm just going to go through the list of questions here, and I'm going to answer as many of them as I can. A lot of them repeat the same sort of question, so if I've answered it once, I will mention it, and so on and so on. Now, I am going to mention you by name, so yes, bit of public shaming, never goes amiss. I'm going to mention you by name, and I will answer your questions as best I can. This is nothing chronological at all. I'm just going to answer them as they come. So, part two of this video, this will go out at the weekend. Part one will go out on, I think, Thursday, and part two will go out at the weekend. Part two is going to be the video session. Now, I've asked a few of my YouTube colleagues if they would like to chip in and post a video question or a video comment, and a lot of them did, or a few of them did, and I'm going to do that in a separate video. And it's quite a funny video. The questions are quite funny, and it's good to see, you know, other organists chipping in, especially one guy, Vidas from Secrets of Organ Playing, who completely lost it. So yeah, we'll get to Vidas and his questions in our next video in part two. So hope you stick around for that. Now, part one. There's a lot of questions here, so I've armed myself with a cup of tea. Don't forget, you can help us out by joining up with Buy Me a Coffee, as it's called now. There's a link on the screen now. And I think actually if everybody who I mention here by name would sponsor a coffee, or in my case, a cup of tea, it's a nice hot sunny day, which is why I'm drinking a cup of tea, then yeah, that would be cool. Thank you in advance. So, cheers. So I've decided to sit outside today. We're catching the sort of the last of the summer sun at the beginning of September. And this is also to answer one of the questions that's coming up, but we'll get to that in a moment. So let's get started. Coaster Bridge Productions. Hello, Coaster Bridge Productions. You asked, I would like to know what's the hardest part about playing the pipe organ. That's a very good question, and I think the answer is very easily the variety of different organs. You could be sitting at a brand new electronically controlled organ and everything works perfectly to touch. You could then 2 hours later go and visit an old mechanical or an old pneumatic action organ in an old church, and when you press a key it takes, you know, a tenth of a second for something to sound. I think that's probably the hardest part of playing organs, plural. The hardest part of playing the organ generally was when you're learning, it's the coordination. But it's the same when you learn to drive a car. You have to sort of learn to coordinate your limbs and your eyes and your ears and things like that. And it's exactly the same with pretty much any musical instrument. I think that, like, learning to play a set of drums like the organ is one of the only instruments that involves all four of your limbs at the same time. So it's basically a question about coordination. Alice Goss. Hello, Alice. Alice writes, I'm currently learning German. Good for you. How did you learn, and did you speak German before working in Germany? And I watch your German videos as well and understand most of the language. I am also a YouTuber and love traveling, especially in Germany. Well, Alice, thank you for your question. I learned Germany by throwing myself in at the deep end when I moved to Germany 21 years ago. I didn't speak a word of German before I arrived here. And yeah, I sort of threw myself in at the deep end. Now, why I moved to Germany, that will be covered in a question shortly. But yeah, in at the deep end. And after a few months, I forced myself to take choir rehearsals and orchestra rehearsals as a conductor. And you basically lose the fear of making mistakes. That's what holds everybody back when they learn a language. They're afraid to make mistakes. They're afraid to embarrass themselves. But once you lose that fear, you sort of pick everything up rather quickly. You make your mistakes. People will help you and correct your mistakes. And learning by doing. So obviously moving to a foreign country, as it was then, for me was very important. I could have stuck to sort of English-speaking communities in Germany. But why the hell would you want to do that? I'm sorry if this offends people, but there's nothing worse than expat communities in countries. Yeah, if you're living in a country, learn the language, learn the culture, get to know the people, get to know the what it's like to learn and live in a foreign country. It's wonderful. It's a great experience, and I'm very glad I did. I think my German. Sometimes I think my German's almost better than my English these days, because sort of pretty much 24/7 it's German speaking these days. My wife's German and we don't speak any English together, so the only chance I get to speak English is to you these days. So there you are, Alice. I hope that answered your question. Pat Meaden. Now, Pat writes regularly, so hi, Pat. Nice to speak to you finally, personally, as it were. I'd like to hear about your organ building experience in any form other than the current Hauptwerk project. Ooh, well, that is basically it. I've never been involved with organ builders per se. As an organist, you sort of have to clamber about inside an organ, a pipe organ, from time to time when something goes wrong. So you sort of learn a bit of organ building there to sort of try and fix things when they break. But sort of official organ building experience is none, I'm afraid. And putting together the Hauptwerk thing, well, sort of wiring together the electronics part, I did that myself. That's fairly easy. But as you saw in a previous video, all the nice stuff, the woodwork and the good-looking bits, that went to a professional organ builder to work. Thanks, Stefan, by the way, for that again. Hope you're well. Speak to you soon. So, Pat, I hope that answers that question. Yes. Now, my old friend Andrew Mundell. Is it Mundell or is it Mundell? I'm not very sure. I think it's Mundell. Andrew, I think you're in Belfast, aren't you, Andrew? Andrew writes regularly and supports regularly. Andrew is a great guy, and I love having Andrew involved. It's all very exciting. Exclamation mark. Thank you. It is all very exciting. Life is good, isn't it? When were you last back in Scotland? And I hope you're both well. Well, yes, we are both well. The Mrs., that's Vanessa, by the way. Have I told you her name? Mrs. Gartshore is Vanessa. Anyway, and Vanessa and I are very well. Thank you very much. We are enjoying life as much as we can with Corona around, but yes. When were you last back in Scotland? Well, this is a bit of an embarrassing question, and if my parents are watching, which they usually are, we haven't been back for a long time. We haven't been back since 2017. And that's the first and only time Vanessa's been in Scotland to visit my family. Yes, everything sort of took a bit of a knock when Corona arrived. We had planned to go back last year to visit the folks, and we'd planned to go this year again. And of course, all these lockdowns and all these restrictions are sort of throwing a spanner in the works. So we haven't been back for 4 years, and that's a bit embarrassing. So sorry, Mum, sorry, Dad, sorry, sister, and nieces and nephews. Sorry, but we hope to be back at some point soon when we can. Yes. Malcolm. Hello, Malcolm. Malcolm Greening writes, does the beautiful dog respond better in English? No. He's a German dog and he doesn't speak a word of English. I can swear at him in English and he just looks at me. So there you are. It doesn't work. Now, next, David Redmayne. And David is a regular on the channel. Hi, David. Appreciate you've been in Germany for a good few years, but which organ in the UK have you enjoyed playing most? Are there any organs in the must-play bucket? Thanks. Well, David, yes. A long time ago, a little bit of name dropping coming up here. A long time ago, I think this is before I went to university. An old chum and I from Inverness, we decided to go on an organ playing tour of the country, and we wanted to visit as many cathedral organs as we possibly could. Now, I think, were we 16, were we 7? I think we were 17 at the time, I can't remember. We weren't very old anyway. And we headed off with our suitcases and a sort of a train, sort of an all around the UK train ticket thing, and visited as many sort of cathedral organs as we could, getting to know some of the crazy organists during that time. So let me see if I can put that list back together. We visited, oh God, where did we start? I honestly can't remember. I think, did we start in York Minster? I can't remember. York Minster, I'm sure, was on the list. I have played York Minster, and I seem to, was it then? Might have been. But we visited Liverpool Cathedral. That was one of the first we visited, and Ian Tracy. And I don't know if Ian watches these videos, but if you do, Ian, hi, how are you? Haven't seen you since the 90s. Can you believe that? It's that long ago. I visited Liverpool Cathedral sort of regularly throughout the 90s and played the organ there and got to know Ian quite well. And there was a performance of the Saint-Saëns organ symphony. Just by chance, I turned up in Liverpool on that day and they were rehearsing. and Ian spotted me in the visitors watching, and I got to play a few chords of the famous last movement while Ian, I think he went off to get a coffee or have a fag. I'm not terribly sure. But anyway, yes, and that was a rather exciting experience. So yes, Liverpool Cathedral is always on the list of must-dos. And I'm talking the Anglican Cathedral here, the huge, wonderful, wonderful 5-manual million-stop organ. It's absolutely wonderful. It's possibly one of the best organs ever made, ever, in that building. It's got its own feeling. It's got its own, I don't know, there's something for all the senses, Liverpool Cathedral. It's got a wonderful smell, if you know what I mean, a wonderful feeling just sitting in that wonderful big. I've been in Liverpool Cathedral many times alone of an evening after evensong. You know, they sort of lock you in and let you sort of sit and play the organ. And wonderful stuff. We even had a session where I was upstairs at the old console and Ian was downstairs at the other console, and we tried playing duets. It didn't work, of course, because of the delay between the consoles, the just physical distance between them, but it was all good fun. Liverpool Cathedral is a definite. Hereford Cathedral we visited, an absolutely magnificent organ. Worcester Cathedral we did as well, which is a wonderful instrument, but not very famous. It should be, it's wonderful. We did Chichester, we did Winchester. Winchester was great because that was in the days of David Hill, and David was a friend of our then organ teacher Russell Grant from Inverness Cathedral. Russell sadly passed away a few months back, and yeah, so we met David at evensong and went for various pints after evensong, and that was great fun. So David, if you're watching, hi. That's a long time ago as well. So yes, so that was Hereford. What else did we do? We went into London and we did St Paul's Cathedral and we did Westminster Abbey. Westminster Abbey being one of the best experiences ever, getting to sit up in the organ loft during an evensong. And this was in the days of Martin Neary. Martin, are you watching? Martin, I saw you a few years ago when I visited a friend in Norfolk, and I can't remember where it was. You played a wonderful organ concert, and we came along to see, and we had a chat afterwards. And again, this was back in the 90s, late 80s it must have been. Was it even the 90s? So yeah, that's when we visited Westminster Abbey, and we got to sort of try out the organ and have a great time. So yeah, and then of course there's the theatre organs. I'm still on David's question here. I'm wombling along, I hope you don't mind. Theatre organs, yeah, wonderful theatre organs. I've played theatre organs all over the UK and the US, and we'll get to that in a slightly later question. So there you are, David, a few of the must-haves. Any organs I haven't played in the UK that I would like to? I'm sure there are. Blackpool Tower, the Wurlitzer there. I've never played the Blackpool Tower Wurlitzer. So Phil, if you're watching, can I have a shot, please? When we're over sometime, we must see if we can sort that out. That would be good fun. I dare say there are many others. There are some wonderful, actually a very good organ that is on the bucket list is in Glasgow, the Kelvin Grove Art Gallery. It's a wonderful, wonderful concert organ, beautiful 3-manual Lewis organ, a must-see. David, I'm sure we'll be back with some more of your questions in the future. Bass bus music. When did you move to Germany and what took you there? A wonderful question, and it's been asked before and it will be asked again, so here's the answer. I moved here at the beginning of 2000. I studied music at Edinburgh University between 1990, when I was only 17, far too early to go to university, but you know, if you're one of those, you know, young chaps who thinks you're good enough, then well, don't. Wait till you're a bit older. Go and get some life experience before you go to university. I did that too late. I went to university, thought I could study all this, get it done quickly, but then I discovered there were other things in life than music. And that distracted me ever so slightly, so I sort of took a little break during my university career, went off, lived, and then came back to finish my university degree, which was also a very good decision. They let me back in, thankfully, and I got to finish my degree. So yes, and then at the end of the 90s, I was sort of pottering about as a musician here and there, not really sort of getting anywhere, but as you do in the UK, you have other jobs as well to make ends meet. And I thought, this isn't what I wanted. Oh God, fish are jumping out of the pond, excuse me. That's not what we wanted. So my then partner, she had a job offer in Germany. She worked as a translator and interpreter, and she had an offer in the city of Bonn. And I decided, well, might as well try it as a musician over in Germany. So just upped and left the country and went to Germany. And like Alice asked earlier, you know, I had to learn German. So yes, that's what took me here. We'll continue that story when the next questions arrive. Fritz Kuhne, hi Fritz, asks, what instruments can you play other than organ and piano? Well, as a left-hander, I'm not very good at string things. I do have a left-handed guitar in my music room that various people have tried to teach me over the years. Actually, some rather famous names have tried to teach me guitar, and I don't know, my hands aren't big enough to grip around the, I don't know what it is, but there's something about the guitar that I find very difficult. Hello, children. Isn't this nice? This is, we live in a sort of German village in the Westerwald, that's Westerwood if you like, between Cologne and Frankfurt. And it's one of those villages where kids still go out and play on the streets. Isn't that nice? Anyway, so yes, the guitar, not really, but I do have a ukulele. An old friend in the UK gave me a ukulele. He was a sort of mad ukulele freak, amongst other things. He had a load of ukuleles that he just used to give to people and say, you must learn the ukulele. And he taught me a few chords in the ukulele, so there's that. But the main other instrument I played is the trombone. When I was young, I played the trombone. I think I was probably better at the trombone than I was at the organ for a while. I wanted to, this question will come up, but let's do it now while we're on the subject of other instruments. The decision was, do you want to go and study music at university? Do you want to go to a music college, or do you want to do something else? And one of the options was join the Marines as a musician, as a trombonist. And I would have loved to have done that, but the training and the sporty side of it put me off. Lazy bastard that I am, I thought, I'm not doing that, that's too much. So that's that. Right, there you are, Fritz. So that answers that question. I have a trombone up there. I've never played it publicly, or not in years. I used to play in jazz bands as a young guy, but maybe one day. Mr. Harmonic Minor. Hello, Mr. Harmonic Minor. Do you have a real name? We don't know. But Mr. Harmonic Minor has has 7 questions. Well, let's see if we can get round all of them. Question 1. What historical organ that no longer exists do you wish you could have played? There's a good sentence. There are some wonderful old theatre organs in the world that I wish were still around so you could have played them. The wonderful Kimball instrument that used to be in the, was it the Empire in New York? A great sort of huge five manual instrument with 3 consoles, 1 5-manual master console and 2 3-manual side consoles. Was it the Empire? I'm not terribly sure. No, it was the Roxy, wasn't it? It was the Roxy in New York that should have been, yes. That would have been a wonderful instrument to have played. Wow. The old Chicago Stadium 6-manual monster, that would have been great fun to have played. Any of the great old theatre organs that sadly were destroyed along with the cinemas they were in. It's the same in the UK. There were some wonderful instruments that would have been great to have seen. Classical instruments, I don't know. Well, I don't know. That's an interesting one. There are probably some wonderful historic instruments that were destroyed during the war. I'll look into that more for you, Mr. Harmonic Minor. Anyway. Number 2, where is the best or nicest organ you have played? Ooh, that's a tough one. We're probably going to have to go back to Liverpool Cathedral again. It's got everything. Like I say, it's something for all the senses. Smells good, sounds good, looks good, feels good. Theatre organ-wise, that's also very difficult. The Fox Detroit Wurlitzer. I got to play the Fox Detroit a couple of times. That's a magnificent instrument in a magnificent building. Wonderful. The Chicago Theatre, I've played that as well. Again, a wonderful, fine Wurlitzer instrument. Absolutely wonderful. My own organ upstairs. That's probably the nicest because it's mine. Question 3. What's the most precarious organ loft you visited and why? Oh, I don't know actually. There was an old organ in Cologne in a church where the organ loft was almost falling off the wall. That was kind of dangerous. It wasn't very famous. It's actually, you're not allowed up there anymore. It is architecturally damaged and no one's allowed up there, which is a shame. It used to creak and sort of move when you played. Didn't feel very safe at all. Question 4. If you could have a Hauptwerk sample set of any organ, which one would it be? I'm assuming you mean an organ that has not yet been sampled. I would go for the Fox Detroit or one of those original perfect sort of Wurlitzer theatre organs that in its original home. So you would sample the organ and its acoustic. I think that would be an absolutely wonderful thing to have done. Now, I have been speaking to a colleague recently who is interested in starting a sample project with me of any organ I want, and I think I'm pushing him towards that kind of, that kind of thing. So a perfect sample of a perfect theatre organ would be quite something for the Hauptwerk world. So I think that's the answer to question 4. Question 5, what's the most surprising place that you have found an organ? It's a theatre organ again, and it was in a private home in upstate New York. I can't remember exactly where, and I can't remember why, but this crazy guy, he was a software developer, and his wife was a pastor in a church, and they'd basically built themselves a European-style castle in a town upstate New York, and he'd installed a 4-manual Wurlitzer, the best organ I've ever played in my life, quality-wise. It was perfect. All the stops, all the ranks had been voiced beautifully. There wasn't a sound from the wind channeling. It was absolutely silent. Everything worked perfectly. It sounded amazing. It was 4 manuals, and I don't know, was it 28 ranks or something like that? It was quite big. And it was just wonderful. And that was very unsurprising, because you sort of drive up to this sort of, shall we say, neo-castle that's been built by these obviously rather wealthy people, and inside was this amazing theatre organ, just in the living room, basically. It was wonderful. So I think that's the most surprising. Question 6, what's your favourite organ piece? Oh, God, no idea. There are so many. I'm not even going to start answering that. Question 7, if you could invent and add any wacky feature to an organ, what would it be? For example, aftertouch, velocity, sensitivity, or pitch bend. Ooh, it's all been done, but on pipe organs, it's been tried. I don't know. I'll get back to you on that one. That's a weird one. Right. I'm going to skip a few because we'll never get done here. Marcus B, 1999. I know Marcus. Hello, Marcus. Love what's happening with the organ. Yes, me too. Thank you. I have a few questions. Question 1. Since you've started your channel, you visited a lot of organs. Do you have a favorite one that you played? They've all been good, haven't they? They really have all. A favorite? I don't know. That's difficult, because a favorite would be St. Joseph Bonboil, where I visit quite regularly and play regularly. A favourite would definitely be Marienstadt Abbey, which is just one of the best organs in the world. Gattenbach, the Nelson organ over in Gattenbach here in the Westerbad, an amazing instrument. It's tucked away in that tiny little village. It's absolutely wonderful. So all of them, I think, is the right answer. All organs are wonderful. Question 2, how do you think your job as an organist or choir director will be post-COVID, as all of us adjust to life post-COVID? Well, will there be a post-COVID, Marcus? We don't know. And a few people have asked that question about working around the corona pandemic. How has that been? Well, thankfully, only a couple of months were sort of without any form of employment whatsoever. Choir rehearsals stopped for a few months last year when the real lockdown was there. Church services stopped for a month or so as well, but they got back, and although people weren't allowed to sing, I was at least allowed to play the organ. I could sing along myself if I wanted. And now it's all sort of pretty much back to normal church-wise. The choirs are rehearsing. We have to sort of keep social distancing and things like that, but it's all back to normal, basically. The only thing that isn't back to normal is performance. Organ concerts, that's a question that's coming up as well, and choir performances, even in whether in a concert or even in a church service. That's very limited at the moment, so that's a bit of a pain, but it's pretty much back to normal, so we'll get on with that. Ronald Figura, what type of amplification or speakers will you be using for the Hauptwerk? Good question. I haven't answered that yet for financial reasons, because a decent set of decent speakers that can recreate an organ sound. Now we're talking about from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, or below 20 hertz basically for the feeling. So you need infrasonic speakers there, and that's not happening at the moment. So we'll get back to that, Ronald, when it comes. Kasper Hovald. Hello, Kasper. Kasper is, I think, from Denmark. I'm just reading this from the context of this question. All right, would you ever consider visiting organs abroad? Yes. I'm specifically thinking of Denmark. That's not that far away. We have some lovely organs up here. Tell me more. He does. A suggestion would be the French 2010 Aubertin organ in the Mariaga Kirche. I had the pleasure of playing it once. Amazing instrument and amazing acoustics. Sounds like a plan. Open invitation, let me know. Another suggestion could be the main organ in Aarhus, in Aarhus Cathedral, which just went through a €2.5 million restoration. Good God. 96 stops and the largest church organ in Denmark. Sounds like a plan. Let's see if we can get that sorted. Kaspar, let's do it. All right. Oh, now, here we go. The longest question of them all. This is going to take quite a while. A chap whose name I don't actually know, but his channel is called A Bachwords Fellow. A Bachwords Fellow. Name, a sort of little wordplay on Bach there, I suppose. So A Bachwords Fellow. A huge list of questions. Let's go through a few of them. At what age did you first play a musical instrument, and what instrument was it? I was very tender age of about 4 when I started playing the piano. Did you begin with formal studies, i.e. classical? Yes. Or more like Fraser noodling, or both? Well, yes, a bit of it was both. My great uncle was a very talented jazz piano player, and when my mum one day said, he's not practicing enough, my Uncle George said, well, don't worry, as long as he's playing something at the piano, it doesn't matter. So, yes, so I did from the very beginning learn to noodle, as you rather say. Are your parents musical? If so, what instruments or voice? Mum, Dad, if you're watching, yes, no, my parents aren't musical. I think my dad was quite good at music when he was in school, at least his report cards suggested he was quite good at music in school. But my parents don't play an instrument. My dad, when we were younger, my dad used to go into the sort of the dining room where we had a stereo system. He would put on headphones and listen to music very loudly. And this was things like Dave Edmunds and you know, sort of real sort of good old rock and roll stuff. And he would sing along, assuming we couldn't hear him because he had his headphones on, but we could hear him. And he has a good singing voice, the old man, but he never did anything with it. So no, but my grandparents, my mother's parents, my mother's mother and uncle, they were twins. So my grandmother and my great uncle, they were twins, and they were quite famous when they were young. They were sort of child musicians, or sort of not quite prodigy stuff, but they were quite famous in the local area around Inverness. My gran played piano and my great uncle played violin, and they did sort of duets as kids, and they were quite well known. And her younger sister, my gran's younger sister, was a bit of an opera singer. So that generation was very musical, and it sort of skipped my parents and then obviously moved to me. My sister was the next question, a Bachwards fellow had. Do you have any musical siblings? Now, my sister will kill me if I say this, but my sister has quite a reputation with the piano. She also took piano lessons, and she struggled her way through through pieces of music like Carry Me Back to Old Virginia and all that sort of stuff. So yes, so when she hears me say that, I will get a lot of stick for that. Yes, my sister could have been very musical, but she didn't stick at it long enough. So sorry, little sister, but yes, we'll move on. If the first instrument was not the organ, at what point did you take up the organ? God, this is only the 4th question of about 40. So anyway, what point did I take up the organ? Don't know. On a trip to Blackpool with my grandmother, I heard the organ in Blackpool Tower, the Wurlitzer organ in Blackpool Tower play, and I was completely mesmerized by this amazing machine with its percussion effects, with its inbuilt piano and all that. And it was the days when it was the real piano, the grand piano that sat on the stage beside the console. And I was mesmerized by this thing. So I wanted to learn the organ. And my parents then bought one of those, you know, sort of a Yamaha Electone organ, a home electronic organ. And I bopped about on that for a long time. And at some point my parents said, wouldn't it be more sensible if he had proper organ lessons? So then I took up organ lessons with, I've mentioned him already in the video, with Russell Grant at the local cathedral. And Russell said, yes, you can, but only if you join the cathedral choir. So that's what started the singing career, as it were. So I joined the choir as a bass, and occasionally as an alto, you know, the falsetto altos that male cathedral choirs had in those days. It's all mixed nowadays, thank God, but in those days it was sort of men and boys only. And so yeah, so that's what, how old would I have been? 11 or 12, probably, something like that. Were your initial organ studies classic or jazz? Well, actually, they were sort of theatre and electronic. That's how I started myself, teaching myself to do it. And then I moved over to classical organ studies later. So there you are. What keyboard technical studies, if any, did you use in your early years? None is the right answer. So none of that Hanon or Czerny or all of that stuff. No, none of my teachers believed in that. They just believed in get on with it, play, learn some pieces of music, we did our grade exams as you do the Royal Associated Board of Music or whatever it's called, and you do your grades. So we did that. What do you remember best about some of the better teachers you've had? I had a blind teacher for a while, which was great because that taught me not to look at your hands. It taught me to rely on everything else. And he was the guy that taught me, that learn finger patterns when you're playing. Don't just sort of learn, a piece of music and that's it. If you're learning a piece of music in E flat major, then learn the E flat scales and arpeggios so that you know where everything is. It sort of falls into your finger patterns better. And he taught me. He taught me the importance of things like learning scales and arpeggios to, learn your place at the keyboard. He was wonderful. He was an absolutely wonderful teacher. What was the worst teacher you had and why? Okay, this is going to get very personal here. I'm not naming names, but when I went off to university, I went through a few organ teachers until I found a very good organ teacher. One of those organ teachers was a bit gropey, shall we say. He just assumed that all young men would fancy him and got a bit gropey, and he got a punch in the face for that. I would not put up with things like that. It's the only time I've ever punched anyone in my life, and I whacked him one, and with hindsight I should have reported it, obviously, because things like that are just not acceptable in any form of education, or in fact they're not appropriate in any form of life situation whatsoever. So I should have reported it. I didn't. I wasn't the only one. He did it to everybody, and he knows who he is, and I hope he's sorry. So anyway, so yes, that was the worst one I ever had. Not for musical reasons, for purely personal reasons, but he got a good punch up the conch, so that shut him up. If you began your studies with a classical approach, at what point or age did you take up jazz? Well, actually, it was the other way around. I loved jazz because of my great uncle. He got me going on jazz piano as well, and I sort of forced myself to learn the classical stuff as well to better my technique, as it were. So that's the whole point. The next question is basically that. So yes, the classical stuff was learnt to get the technique going and improve my jazz technique. That was quite simple. He then goes on to mention, do you do the sort of the normal repertoire, Beethoven, Chopin, Brahms, Schubert, Schumann, Debussy, Ravel, Dohnanyi, and so on? Yes, all of those and more. What's the most advanced piano literature you've ever played? God, Rachmaninoff, obviously. Yeah, I had a whack at variations on a theme by Paganini with a student orchestra, and I got through a performance of it. It was pretty taxing, obviously, so yeah. So I didn't bother with the piano concertos by Rachmaninoff because I don't have very big hands. And this is great, I get to offend someone again. In a recent video, I commented that I have little hands. I have Donald Trump's hands. And someone took umbrage at that. So, tough. I have Trumpy hands. So it's why I have difficulty playing things like Dupré as well, wonderful Dupré works, which you need huge hands for that kind of stuff, and I just don't have them. So it's a bit of a shame. And also my left hand, I can just about scrape a tenth in my left hand. So things like stride piano, Fats Waller style. I love playing that. I love that music, but my hands just aren't quite big enough. If I could change anything about my body, that's what it would be: bigger hands. Right, at what age did you begin playing with jazz bands and where? Inverness, 16, trombone, the Tin Pan Alley Band. An absolutely rotten old band, but bloody good fun. That's not true, they were pretty good, but it was sort of a bunch of, I'm sorry to say this, I have to say it, they're probably all dead now anyway, but a bunch of old duffers playing jazz music in this band, and I sort of joined them on trombone, and it's great, you get your chops, as it were, you get to learn your riffs and your chops and solos. There was another guy who played trombone who was just the most awful bore. I can't remember his name, but I'm not going to say it. He was awful. He was so awful, but it was good fun at the time. We wore blue bow ties and straw boater hats. I'm sure there's a picture of me doing it somewhere. I'll have a dig through my stuff. If I can find a picture of me with that awful band, I'll see if I can do it. And yes, and I played piano and trombone in other bands as well, and sort of moved on to other other things. When I moved to Europe, of course, I got involved in professional jazz bands, thank God, and played piano with quite a lot of really good bands in Germany. Was very lucky and played some really good stuff there. What genres of jazz have you played? Dixie, big band, progressive, other? All of those. I don't like the word Dixie. I like to call it trad jazz, traditional jazz. That's the British term for it. Classic jazz is actually a much more appropriate term for it, I think. And I've played with a lot of bands over the years, loved it always. And yeah, it's just, you know, the music has grown old, as has its audiences, and sadly it's sort of dying out. Have you ever formed your own band? Yes, I have had various bands throughout my life, but I've always come to the conclusion that it's always better to do everything all by yourself. It's less stressful. Who are some of your favorite jazz musicians, groups, or go-to for listening and emulation? That is the subject of an entire other video. We will come to that at some point. Do you have one or more college level or graduate degrees in music? Yes, from the University of Edinburgh. Are you also a vocalist? And then he says, when sober or only when inebriated? Well, we're going to leave a backwards fellows questions at that point and move on. But yes, obviously as a choir conductor, you sing along as well. And I love singing. I don't do it often enough. I should do it some more. You want to hear a video of me singing something? I'd love to know what you think of Scottish music, says Willem Kossen. I think Willem is from the Netherlands. Hi, Willem. I love Scottish music, obviously, being Scottish. I have no idea what a slip jig is. It sounds like an accident you have while dancing. I once broke my wrist dancing at a ceilidh in Aberdeen. So, yes, that's how dangerous dancing can be. Would you be willing to play some of that on the organ in the future? Yes. Someone else asked about learning German, so we'll cover that. Oh, here's a good one. Cornish Minor. As you are so close to Marienstadt Abbey and its famous organ, have you any intention to try sampling it yourself or getting it sampled for Hauptwerk? The answer to that will be coming soon in a future video. But it's yes. Tim Doherty. Tim Doherty says, I'll send you money! Exclamation mark. Thank you, Tim. I'm looking forward to that. Right, let's find the next question. We need to move on a bit here. I'm still quite far down the list, aren't I? Amadea27 asks, how does an organist practice and how is your practice session structured? Don't ask me that because I'm not, unfortunately, I'm not the most conscientious practicer of music. Organists are playing tons of early music. Are they? I don't. What are the thoughts on an average organ professional? What's an average organ professional? And your personal thoughts about the historically informed performance practice? Aha, that's a very good question. Well, I take it you're talking about things like never use your heels when playing Bach and never do this and never do that and don't wear a green tie on a Thursday. Yeah, well, the organ world is very stuffy about things like that. It's one of the only worlds that is. I don't know why. If you're playing a modern organ, then there's no reason to be sort of historically accurate, is there? If you're playing a historic instrument, if you're playing an original Baroque organ in an original Baroque church with original Baroque keyboards and pedal boards, then yes, you kind of have to play historically correct because it's not possible otherwise. So I think that should answer that question. Andrew Prince from the UK asks, what is your middle name? Well, you find out. It begins with M and it's Scottish. It's my clan name, so work that one out. It's not Muck anything, so I'll let you know there. Stuart Johnson asks, what do you think about recording some Hauptwerk organ recitals to be replayed in churches around the country that use Hauptwerk organs? That's an interesting question. The MIDI capabilities of Hauptwerk could theoretically enable that. Maybe someone out there has tried that, so let me know. I haven't yet, but I don't. Tracy Griffiths writes and says, I don't have any questions, but I do enjoy your videos. Thank you, Tracy. Jake Broer. Jake is a regular performer. Hi, Jake. A regular questionnaire. Sorry. Hi, Jake. You could always... Oh, no, that was something else. Question for the Q&A. What was your inspiration to take up the organ? We've covered that. It was the Wurlitzer organ in Blackpool Tower. Was it a mentor of yours or was it something you've always been interested in? Well, there you have it. It was the wonderful world of the theatre organ that got me going. Derek Field, great video question. What training do you need to become an organist? How long does it take? Oh my God, that's a question that you can't answer. What training do you need to become an organist? It helps if you have a knowledge of keyboard instruments. It is not a necessity, and I really, really despise people who say that it's an absolute, you must have at least grade 8 piano, before you can start taking up the organ. What a load of rubbish. Why can't you just sit down at the organ and start learning the organ? Yes, it might take a little longer, but you're going to learn the coordination from day one. So I think that's nonsense. You don't need any qualifications. You just, I think you should want to be able to play the, am I showing you my stomach? God, I've just realized that. Sorry about that. You should want to learn the organ. I think that's all you need to become an organist. And how long does it take? Well, how much do you practice? How well do you practice? That's the answer to that one. So Derek Field, good question. So someone else, Clay Ford. Clay Ford. That's a wonderful name, isn't it? Clay Ford. You should be an actor with a name like that. Clay asked, why did you choose to live in Germany rather than UK? Well, we've covered that already, so I hope that answered your question. Heart Lover 1717. Always look forward to your videos. Thank you. 3 questions. 1, you are gifted in improvisation. Thank you. How did you learn? Learning by doing. Jazzy upbringing, harmony. Learn about the harmony of jazzy tunes, harmonic progressions, circle of fifths, 1-6-2-5-1 progressions, all that sort of stuff. Harmonic progressions in classical music, harmonic progressions in all kinds of music. That's sort of what gets me going with improvisation. And then you sort of work out progressions that you think sound nice, and then you build them into pieces of music that you're making up as you're going along. It's basically that. What has been the most challenging part of learning German as an adult? Ooh, that is a very good question. Der, die, das. The genders. German has 3 genders, male, masculine, feminine, and neuter. And there aren't many rules governing der, die, das. And I still find that, after 20 years, I still find that very difficult. Question number 3, when are you going to finish Bach's 582? That's the Passacaglia. Well, soon. Right. James Flores, my friend and colleague from down under, says expositioning and then laughs. I have no idea what you mean by that, James, but perhaps you'd like to explain. Right. Will the boogie woogie tutorials be continue, says Eddie Bitmail. Yes, they will, Eddie. Tikon Bogomolets. Tikon Bogomolets. That's a brilliant name. Oh, it's not a question, it's just something. Then there is the 6 manual 154 stop organ at the Cathedral of Our Lady in Poland with its grandiose 15-second reverberation. It is supposedly patterned after the planned Kavai. Oh, for the planned Kavai call instrument for St. Peter's Basilica in Rome that never got built. That would be an interesting organ to see. Open invitation to Poland. I'm yours. Built for Fun. Hi, Built for Fun. I like Built for Fun. It regularly writes and has a lot to say, and has been an avid watcher and supporter of the channel for the past while. So Built for Fun, thanks for this question. What are your chances you can visit the Wanamaker organ? Oh, Peter Richard Conte. If you are watching, or if someone knows him, get in touch and see if I could be invited to play the organ in Philadelphia. I would love to visit the Wanamaker organ, if only to play the plethora of Vox Humanae with the string organ attached. It's just the most amazing sound that is ever. The organ is magnificent, of course, and it's pretty much 100% restored as far as I know. Maybe it is by now, and I'd love to get my hands on it. It would be a wonderful experience. So, Peter Richard Conte, if you're watching, give me a shout out and we'll sort something out. Back to the US, that would be good fun. Right. Bum, 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 bum. Leslie Schramm. Hi, Leslie. I'm trying to work out the question here. Favorite piece of music? What was the current most disliked piece of music and why? So what do you really dislike or like? Shall we stick to organ music? Because there's an awful lot of music out there that I really dislike. Sort of popular music that has nothing to do with music. If a team of people were involved in the writing of a piece of music, then it's going to be awful. If a piece of music was written by one human being, so for instance Freddie Mercury or Ed Sheeran nowadays, I suppose, people who write their own music, that's always going to be good. But when there's a sort of team of people involved trying to make it, it's always going to be a disaster. It's just all about that, isn't it? So that's rubbish. Now, in the organ world, ooh, I'm not a great fan of the music of Reger, Max Reger. His music sort of is just sort of a mirror to his personality. He was a bad-tempered drunk, a bad-tempered, violent drunk, and I think that comes across rather well in most of his music. I'm going to leave it at that. What music do I really like? I love Dufresne's music. It's just the best. It's the most wonderful music ever written. Dupré is also wonderful music. Most of the French, from the French Romantic up to pretty modern stuff, up to Messiaen, I would say, is wonderful, wonderful stuff, and it really needs to be played more. Littez or L'Anglais, that needs to be played more because it's good fun music, it's great music. Alain's music, there wasn't enough of it because he died at too early an age. He would have been quite an amazing composer if he'd lived longer. I love that French stuff. A lot of modern German music is weird but kind of cool. When it gets too experimental, I sort of think, nah, don't need this. There has to be some sort of rhyme or reason to the piece of music for me to like it. Otherwise, I grow rather bored of it very quickly and dislike it. Right. David M., who is presumably from the US, asks, he is curious to know if I have ever played any pipe organs here in the US, Casavant or Aeolian Skinner. Have you ever played the Rudolf Knoll organ in Hasselt, Netherlands? How about Arp Schnitger organs? Looking forward to hearing from you. Well, David, I've only ever played theatre organs in the US. I've never played a classical pipe organ in the US. So, there's your answer. One day, though. Open invitation. Moduvator writes, hello, Herr Fraser. That's cute. I remember from one of your older videos, which was German only, you mentioned having met and played together with John Lord from Deep Purple. I would be most thankful if you could tell us a bit more about that occasion, which would fit the topic of colleagues of the organ world nicely, I believe. Thank you. Well, yes. When I moved to Germany, I was involved with a lot of jazz bands, and I came across a guy one day in a band. And this was a telephone band that had been put together for some gig. I think it was some gig on a hotel boat on the River Mosel. I think we met in Trier and went off on the boat, played to sort of geriatric American tourists who weren't interested in us at all. But it was a band put together. There were we were all professional jazz musicians. We were just put together for that gig. And there was this guy playing the banjo. And I kept looking at him and thinking, we didn't really talk. We just met, got on board. The guy started shouting out tunes and we started playing. And this guy on the banjo, he was a very average banjo player, but I was watching him play and his technique was very guitar-like. And I thought, hold on a minute, this is somebody very different. There's this old guy, hair tied back in a ponytail. It's not John Lord, we'll get into that later. Hair tied back in a ponytail. And when we had a break, we got off the boat and I went over to him and I said, I know you from somewhere else. And he laughed and said, yeah, think back to, and then he sort of mentioned where we'd played together back before in the US, actually. We'd played together with someone very famous who I won't mention. We'd played together with this guy, and he was the guitarist that night, a very, very talented blues guitarist. And his name was John Marshall. And John Marshall he's from London, but for many years he was Aretha Franklin's guitarist. He also played with a lot of other very famous people, and so this was John playing banjo on a boat, and I thought, what the bloody hell are you doing here? Well, he lived in Düsseldorf. He moved to Germany as well to be with the woman he loved, and he was picking up gigs. And I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. So I called him up a few days later and I said, John, we need to get together, make up our own band, and sort out a few gigs. And he said, oh, that's a great idea. Look, I've got this old mate. If you do piano, I've got this old friend who'll do organ. And I said, yeah, bring him along. Do I know him? He said, yeah, you know him. He doesn't live in Germany, but he's over here regularly. He's got someone, here in Germany, and he comes and visits her regularly. I thought, all right, okay, I know what that means. So I needed to find a bass player and a drummer. So I did, and we put this band together, and John organized a little concert for us in Düsseldorf. And we only just turned up on this day, and this guy was late, his flight was late, and he jumped in a taxi and arrived, and the Hammond organ was all set up. We'd rented a Hammond organ for him, set up to his expectations. And John wouldn't tell me who this guy was. So we started playing a few tunes, a few jazz numbers. It was all jazz and blues, nothing else. And this guy turned up. He walked in the door and I thought, you have to be joking. That's John Lord. Bloody hell. And he sort of wandered over and he said, oh, hi, Fraser. I've heard lots about you. Thanks for the invitation. I'm so glad, to be able to play. I love playing with John when he plays guitar. We play regularly together. And it's an honor to be able to play with you as well. And I thought, no, it's an honor to be able to play with you. And he sat down at the organ and just sort of said, right, you shout out the tunes and I'll do what you want. And this happened a few times. We got John Lord involved, and John also then got me involved in a couple of his projects when he was in Germany. And so I met John Lord a few times. We played together a few times, and he was wonderful. Just incredibly down to earth, good fun, very serious, but also very spontaneous. Very serious about the sort of the quality of the music. It had to be good quality music that we put out, and it was great fun. And of course, we got to play some Deep Purple stuff as well, just for fun. So yeah, so there you are. That was my John Lord story. I have lots of other stories about other famous musicians I have been lucky enough to play with over the years. So we might do a name-dropping one day, but that'll do for today. Right, moving on. We've got to move on here. I've got to get something. There is going to be a piece of music at the end of this, by the way. I hope you're still with me. Do you have any experience of the Versi brand of organs? Says Incognito. No, I don't. Yes. Here, Chris Blackwell. Hi, Chris. Chris asks, you recently mentioned you played in a band or bands. Would love some more history of Fraser, like what bands you've been in, what kind of music you played, any funny experiences you had for playing. Bonus would be footage of you playing in a band. Type in my name to YouTube, put piano behind it, and you will find lots of videos of me playing in various jazz bands over the years. I even had dark hair in some of them. That's how old they are. So there we are. Moving on. Jerry Ellis from Dublin. Hi, Jerry. Jerry writes, did you ever meet the late Katherine Ennis, organist? And did you ever hear her play an Irish tune called Easter Snow? No, sorry, I didn't. To both of those questions, I'm sorry. I actually never come across the name Katherine Ennis, so I will look her up, and I will also look up the Irish tune called Easter Snow. Thank you, Jerry, for that. Right, secrets of organ playing. This is Vidas. Vidas asked some questions and wanted to get a video out. That's coming in part 2 of this video. Mark Noller, come to Chicago, some awesome organs. Yes, I got to play the organ in Chicago Theatre, the Wurlitzer organ. I walked in when I was visiting Chicago and said, hello, I'm an organist from Scotland, can I play the organ? And by pure luck, the guy said, yeah, all right. Let me play the organ for a couple of hours. They were setting up for an Elton John concert. And while they were setting up, I provided some background music for them. So there you are. Jerry Philp asks, when you try out an organ which is new to you, do you have favorite pieces or composers that you like to play? No, I improvise. I start off with the softest stops, build up a crescendo, try out the different stops, and sort of waffle about, noodle about in my own style. So there you are. Peter Allison from Lincolnshire. Peter Allison has been writing quite a lot recently, so hi, Peter. May I ask, what are your top 5 organ music composers of any era? Oh, that's a very difficult question. Bach, Buxtehude, Krebs, Bruns from Baroque stuff, wonderful stuff. Yeah, was that 5? I don't know. Classical era, I'm not the greatest fan of classical organ music, so we're talking about Mozart's era now. I'm not the greatest fan. Romantic, I can go on forever here. 5 isn't enough, an awful lot. Brahms wrote some very nice organ music. Schumann wrote some very nice organ music. Nobody knows. Liszt, obviously. French guys, difficult. Lefebvre Velly and his crazy organ works. They're great fun, they are. Are we talking Dubois? I suppose still belongs to the Romantic era, doesn't he? And then sort of moving into the more modern world. Well, we've obviously got Herbert Howells, Edward Bairstow. Nobody talks about Edward Bairstow anymore. I must feature some of his music. It's very good. Maurice Duruflé. There we are again. Anything by César Franck, and then moving on through the French. So Widor, Vierne, Dupré, Duruflé, Messiaen. Moving on that way. So yeah. Least favorite composers, I've already mentioned Max Reger, so there you are. Yes. Right. Philip Brown wants a quick potted biography, how a Scot came to reside in Germany. Well, I've covered that, so more on that in the next one. How did you get started in organ playing, asks KS4IO, whatever that is. How did you get started in organ playing and advancing to multi-keyboards? Well, being an organ player is always going to be multi-keyboards. So there you are. Dominic Don has a very interesting question. Do you speak Scot? Question mark. And then the Germanic language. Are you referring to Scots? I don't, and I don't speak Gaelic either. Coming from Inverness in the north of Scotland, everyone would assume that you would speak Gaelic. Well, no. Inverness was a very strange place historically. It was always cut off from the rest of the UK. You could only really get to it by sea. It was a very sort of important port for the north of Scotland. So people from Inverness, it is claimed, talk the clearest or speak the clearest English of any accent in the UK at least. And it's because they had to be understood by people from all over the world visiting. Gaelic was never spoken traditionally in Inverness. It was always going to be, in fact, they spoke more French in Inverness than they did Gaelic, historically speaking. Nowadays, of course, the Gaelic mafia have got hold of everything, and everything's in Gaelic and English these days, which is quite funny, seeing as it was never spoken there. Gaelic was always on the west coast of Scotland. So yes, my dad comes from a town slightly further north of Inverness. It's called Dingwall, which is of course an old Norse name, and if you look at the dialect in that part of Scotland, it's all basically Viking. So there you are. So no, I don't. I only speak English and German, and I can swear in French and Italian if you need me to. Marcel Janssens, who also writes regularly, asked if I ever played a Hammond B3. I used to own a Hammond B3 and I sold it when I moved to Germany. How stupid was I? So yes, I will be doing a video on Hammond organs soon, so there you are. Sebastian, is it Sebastian Iodice? Is that an Italian name, or is it Iodice? I've no idea. Hi Fraser, would love to hear some Baroque improvising from you. Pooh, that'll be a bit of a task. I'm not very good at Baroque improvising, so but I might try it one day. Right. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, Mr. Vic, 2491. Hi, Vic. Vic writes regularly as well. I know that you wanted to keep personal details out of it, but why would a Scottish chap move to Germany or play in jazz clubs, love cars and learn piano and organ? I think we've covered pretty much all of that already. The cars, yes, the cars that came from, well, I got my license when I was 17, obviously, and I've loved cars ever since. I love tinkering on cars as well. I have a second channel called Gartshore's Garage. Go check it out. Organs are an essential business. Why do people donate theirs when they die? Says Austin Benesh. Well, that was a fun little joke, wasn't it? Eddie Harkin, while we're on the subject of cars, said, what type of cars do I like? Do I have any particular breed of car that I like? Bentley. I've never had a Bentley. I always wanted a Bentley, and if I had the funds, I would buy a Bentley instantly. Probably one of the more modern ones after Volkswagen got hold of them, just quite simply because they're more reliable. I just love the Bentley brand. If anyone wants to loan me a Bentley for a day for a video, I'd be very happy to say yes. Arne Phil Bordy, or Arne Peel Bordy, I'm not sure where you're from, it's a wonderful name. Have you played Hymn to Freedom on organ? That's a piece of music by Oscar Peterson, if you don't know. I'm assuming you're referring to Oscar Peterson. If not, would you give it a try? Sure. Starting as a classical hymn and twist it into the fabulous jazz tune that it is. The most beautiful jazz tune, in my opinion, partly because of its origin going back when Oscar Peterson just started improvising in the studio. Wrong. Oscar Peterson took that piece of music from Billy Taylor's masterpiece, oops, my thing's closing down here, masterpiece called I Wish I Knew What It Would Be to Be Free, or something like that. I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. Bizarre title. It's from the old Billy Taylor piece that he took the idea for Hymn to Freedom. So there you are. There's an interesting anecdote for you, Arne. Matthew Rakowski, I hope you're still with us, it's quite a long one, isn't it? Matthew Rakowski writes, what's the largest organ you've played? Liverpool Cathedral. How far have you been willing to travel to play an organ? I will travel as far as you want me to play an organ. I've been in the States to play organs, so that's as far as I've been. Right, I'm going to skip quite a few here. Yes, I'm going to skip a few because there was a lot of resonance, a lot of repetition, sorry, here. I'm repeating myself here. Dave Maynard. Hi, Dave. Hi, Fraser, with a Z. It's always with an S, please. Get that right. That's going to cost you a coffee, okay? Hi, Fraser. What's your favorite registration on the organ? What's it like with power tools? My neighbors are always making noises with power tools. Last time I posted a video, I mentioned that it was a sunny day. All my neighbors were out working with power tools. Today, mercifully, silence. Favorite registration on the organ would be anything with a celeste, so string celeste, or even better, flute celestes. Of course, with the 32 foot down in the pedal as well. It's just the most wonderful ethereal sound. If you have a wonderful big acoustic to carry it, it's just absolutely wonderful. So there you are. I love big stuff and tutis and tubas and enchimade and all that sort of stuff, but I prefer the soft stuff. Would you ever do a program like Diane Bish's The Joy of Music, or Howard Goodall did something years ago, didn't he? If you were approached by a television company, how would you feel if you had the opportunity to travel the world and record with strict deadlines and then move to the next place after just a day? That was a question by Dylan Kelly. Well, Dylan, I would love to do that. If a television company would approach me and said, Fraser, would you do an organ show for us? I would jump at the chance. Basically, it's why I'm doing this channel, because I want to sort of, it's my own little series about the organ, isn't it? So yes is the answer to Dylan's question there. Bruce Wayne writes, is that your real name? Bruce Wayne writes, do the vibrations that get sent throughout your body when in the presence of a playing organ have an esoteric association? Do you mean esoteric, or do you mean erotic, or do you mean both? Moving on. Lee, my old friend Lee Clark from the south of England. Hello, Lee. Lee asks, living in the UK, where many pipe organs seem to be falling into decay and relying on volunteers to keep them going, it's been a revelation to discover how many thriving organ builders there seem to be in Germany. Would you like to see organ building promoted as a career and not just the playing of these magnificent instruments? Lee, yes, is the answer to that. It's a wonderful question and it's a wonderful idea. The organ world is not just about the instruments that exist, it's about the instruments that will come. And organ building can be studied in Germany. Now, we've mentioned this when we visited Stefan and his workshop. There's a link. And yes, and in the UK, the organ building world is still there. But as you say, an awful lot of instruments are failing and or falling into states of decay. And it's a great shame. However, a lot of these companies are cottoning onto this fact, and they're coming to the UK. German companies or other companies from around the world are coming to the UK, and they are saving these instruments, removing them from these decaying old buildings and reinstalling them in churches that are in dire need of a new instrument themselves here. Now, it's a money thing. In Germany, of course, we still have church taxes. The Protestant and the Catholic Church still take church taxes. And that obviously helps to fund projects like that and instruments like that. Of course, they rely on donations by private individuals or companies as well, but it's happening. I would like to see it happen all around the world, obviously. Nothing beats a proper pipe organ in its proper environment. Thank you, Lee, for that. I hope you're well, and I enjoy hearing from you. Ludi Cosman, what are some of your favorite organists, and what do you appreciate in them? I take it you mean who are some of my favorite organists? Personal question. Ooh, personal question. I have a lot of friends in the organ world who are also concert organists, and we have a lot of fun together when we get the chance. And I don't know. I can't really answer that question. I'm not going to name names. So if you wanted me to do that. There are so many wonderful organists out there, and most of them are good, down-to-earth people as well. Some of them are a bit freaky, in a good way, obviously, but yes, we'll leave it at that. When did you start playing at church? Asks Philip Powell. Favorite hymn, Philip? Oh, God, favorite hymn. Don't have a favorite hymn. I like a lot of them. When did I start playing at church? I got my first organist's job when I went to university. I think I was 18, and I've been doing it ever since. Peter King. Peter is a regular commenter as well, and Peter asked a question that's already been asked. When did I first realize I had the passion and gift for playing the organ? Well, back to Blackpool Tower and back to the home organ we had. So that was that. And also, how do you manage to do 4 different things with your limbs? Women reckon they can multitask, but playing the organ must come close. Let's not get into the subject of multitasking ladies. Let's keep it that way. How do you do things with all four? Well, if you drive a car, you do things with all four limbs as well, don't you? So, or if you play the drums. Learning by doing. Learn the technique, muscle memory. That's the easy way to do it. It takes a while, but once you've got it, it stays. It's like riding a bike, I suppose. You get used to it. Matthew Taylor, I've got the same question I've asked in the past. Have you thought about doing an organ tour or concert tour in the US? Oh, yes. And I am in touch with a guy called Charles in California, who would love to get me over to play San Diego. And we're waiting until the whole COVID thing is out of the way, and then that will be going. So if we could get a concert tour around that as well, that would be wonderful. My missus has never been to the US, so she would love to join us there. Right. Is my wife a musician? Talking about Vanessa, is she anyway involved in music? And how did we meet? Asked Joao Martins. Joao with a wonderful Brazilian or Portuguese name. No, she's not a musician, and she's not really involved in music. I did sort of force her to join one of my church choirs so that she is a bit musical. She can sing very nicely, and she can play a bit of piano. She won't say that, but she can. How did we meet? That's a very nice story. She used to run restaurants. And I organized a Christmas event with one of my musical groups in her restaurant. And in the planning of that event, we got very chatty. And without wanting to be too rude about our paths, we were both in less than ideal relationships, shall we say. And we got together. There you are, simple as that. Yes, so an invitation, Stephen Cook inviting me to Portugal. Stephen, I would love to come to Portugal. There are some wonderful instruments down there, so that would be great. Right, In Yo Bill, who is an expat from California who now lives in Germany. They didn't really have a question as such, but they mentioned that they would like to come to Bonn when I'm playing in St. Joseph sometime. So yes, In Your Bill, we will be mentioning that when it's coming again, and it would be great to see you, great to come along. What do you think about the 100-inch stops at the Boardwalk Hall organ in Atlanta? Ooh, that was from Ben Madison. Yes. Big guns are always good on an organ. So yes, that's an instrument I would love to see. I know it's sort of still being restored to its former glory. So one day when it's finished, and hopefully I get to do that US tour we were just talking about, wouldn't that be great? A Bachwoods fellow wrote back again to say, I think you just signed up to do a complete autobiography. Oh God, no, please no. Right, we're going to skip quite a lot of these. Darth Sidious asks, I wonder is that his real name? Darth Sidious asks, have you ever been to Gibraltar? Why not come on holiday? That'd be a good idea. Any organs in Gibraltar? Actually, I'm in touch with an organist at the moment who's in Malta. More on that soon because we're going to do an interview. So yes, we could do organs of the Mediterranean islands. Start with Gibraltar and then work our way around the Mediterranean. How would that be? How would that be? All right, last question. A few questions actually from one guy, Mitchell Scheffler. Mitchell Scheffler, that's a wonderful name. I picture Mitchell Scheffler as someone who, I'm not going to say it, but yes, someone who works in a rather magnificent company. Do you prefer stops that are pulls, toggle switches, or push buttons? Depends on the organ. Proper stops on an English style organ are always going to be best. Tabs on a theatre organ will always be better, and push stops on some modern electronic German organs quite handy. So, depends is the answer to that one. Do you prefer organs that are completely manual, all electric, or a hybrid? Again, depends. If it's a perfectly balanced mechanical organ where everything works beautifully, then I will prefer that. If it's an electronic organ because of the distance between console and pipes and it works without any delay, perfect. A hybrid, a lot of them are these days, so again, it depends. Mitchell also asks, it would be great to see a compilation video of you playing various styles of organs to get a sense of how an English style organ differs in sound and capabilities from a French style organ and other styles. That is coming up soon. I now have quite a few sample sets on my Hauptwerk organ, so that will be coming up soon. And also your final question for today. I did see a video 4 years ago in German entitled, How Does an Organ Work? Are you going to do an English video of that? Yes, I We're going to be back out and about soon looking at real organs again, not just the Hauptwerk organ from upstairs. And that will be a feature of one of those videos. So, my goodness, that was a long one. I hope you stayed with me for that. I hope it was interesting for you, and I hope I got one of your questions answered, if you were one of the people answering there. If I didn't get around to it, sorry, there were just so many. Can't answer them all in one video. I'm going to nip upstairs now and play a piece of music. My wife requested a short and cute piece of music, a short, fun piece of music, but not jazz, as she said. So I have to go and work out what that's going to be. That was part 1 of our question and answer session. Part 2 will be the organ colleagues from here on YouTube asking me some questions, and I will get round to answering them. So there will be a bit of repetition, I suppose, but it will be more entertaining as you get to see and hear some other faces and voices. Thanks for watching. Here's a piece of music. See you next time. Bye bye.